Okay, and we are live. I always feel like at the beginning of these things that I should have music playing or something as I'm fiddling in the background trying to get everything to work. Um, Here we are. So we're streaming here on YouTube and Instagram. Everything is working. Very exciting. That's a
There's
first.
people actually watching us?
There may be. I know there was a few folks in Europe that were very excited that we picked this time because they could actually watch it. Okay. Typically, I'm like super late at night for them, so yeah. This is a treat for our friends in Europe.
Hello, Europeans.
Hello, Nathan. I'm sure you're watching. We'll get started here. Oh, there's Nathan. My name is Sean Watkins. I'm the owner of Athenaeum Comic Art. We represent the original art of some of the most fabulous independent and alternative cartoonists in the business. Today, we're talking with Athenaeum cartoonist Alison Bechdel. Alison doesn't really need an intro, but I'll say a few words before we get into the conversation. Alison's part of comics royalty. She's created some of the most significant and important graphic novels of our time, of my time. They include Fun Home, Are You My Mother, The Secret to Superhuman Strength, and most recently Spent. Alison's also really well known for the long-running and excellent Dykes to Watch Out For comic strip. Thank you so much, Alison, for joining me today. I'm
so happy to be doing this with you, Sean.
Really appreciate it. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things today. Of course, art. I help to sell your original art, and we'll talk a lot about that. But I thought a good way for us to begin the conversation is to start with your latest book, Spent, which I very much enjoyed. It made me laugh out loud many times as I was reading it. It was such a joy to see some of your characters from Dykes coming back to life after so long. So, it's a bit of a return to Dykes to Watch Out For. Yeah. But the irony is that you only did part of the book traditionally and a lot of it digitally. I'd love to talk first, kind of get your thoughts on your use of traditional versus digital tools and kind of why you pick one over the other.
Yeah. It's funny. I think we connected right around the time that I was starting to work digitally for my last book, which I did mostly because of time pressure. And it was like sort of ironic because you were preparing to sell my original artwork, and I was now working in a way that generated no original artwork. So that was just sort of interesting. So I've always, I'm old. I started doing comics before there was Photoshop, before there was modems and internet. I would make, draw my stuff on paper, copy it at Kinko's, fold it up and put it in the mail with stamps on it and send it places. So I've experienced this whole evolution in how we do things over all these decades. And I had adopted a lot of tech things along the way, certainly using Photoshop, certainly, sending out digital copies of my work. But all along I kept drawing by hand. I would make my corrections in Photoshop, but I'd do the work itself on Bristol board with a steel nib, a Hunt artist nib. And that just was how I worked. But as the deadline for this last book was crushing down on me, I started to get why people work digitally. I could skip scanning my art, which is a pain in the ass, takes a long time. I could skip, I do a lot of sketching and, look at photo references, and I wouldn't have to print that stuff out the way I did when I was drawing by hand. I loved sketching digitally. And I got this system going where I'd make a rough sketch and then I'd turn it blue, and then I'd go over it on a new layer with black and make a more refined version of the sketch. It's like I worked in real materials, but now it was just quicker and easier.
Mm. It was really sad for me to hear that you were moving digitally, although it makes your older work more rare. So that's a plus,
Well,
I guess.
I don't know if I'm going to stick with this. I was trying to draw on my tablet yesterday, and all of a sudden the pen stopped working, and it's just like there's always all these technical glitches that make me crazy. So I just threw it aside and got out my pencil and started doing it traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I do draw better that way. It was fun experimenting with it unspent, but I don't think I want to keep doing that. I might do my sketching that way and then do the final art the old-fashioned way, but I haven't figured that out yet.
Do you feel, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and doing it with pen and ink is probably, I mean, very second nature at this point. Are you just more comfortable because you've done it for longer in that way? Is it the digital, the tactileness of the digital space that's just not the same? I'm always curious as a non-artist. I see folks using their tablets a lot more simply, I think, because of convenience and being able to do it anywhere and things like that. But I've also heard that you can get so stuck in the details with digital where you're just zooming in to a point where no one would ever see it on the page. So I'm curious, your thoughts about kind of those differences there.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting some guidance from John Chad, who's a cartoonist and also a tech guy from the Center for Cartoon Studies. I mean, he came through there. Excuse me. And he gave me some really good tips. When he's drawing digitally, he never goes in more than, like, I don't know, a certain percentage. I forget what it was. And so I would try to stick to that. Like you can zoom in till your pixels like that, but no one's ever going to see it and it's going to look weird. So that's simple enough to do, to not allow yourself to drill in too far. But I could never get a real feel for the digital pen. Like when I'm drawing with a steel nib, it's a beautiful thing when I can get it to work. I spend half my time like dipping it, wiping it, re-dipping it, like throwing it off, trying to break a new one in. That makes me crazy too. But once I get a good nib going, it makes a beautiful line, and I could never get that kind of line with the same kind of sensitivity or flexibility digitally. Maybe I just don't know how to design the brush or the pencil. But I don't really want to be spending my time designing pens in Photoshop. I want to just be drawing. So as you can see, I'm ambivalent. I'm sort of going back to my roots a little bit.
Well, as a art rep, much prefer you to work traditionally for a variety of reasons. I've had a number of conversations recently with mostly digital folks, and I do work with artists that lean more digital. And my advice has been do some of it traditionally. At least there's a few chapters that we have that you did traditionally. And having that to be able to selling is one thing, but being able to show the art in different spaces, galleries, things like that can be a big benefit. So that's my advice to anyone that's working digitally. Just do a few things traditional, if only to have a way to share it more physically. Because as I go through the journey as an art rep, I'm seeing the importance of kind of putting things on walls. People interact with art differently when it's on a wall, for good or bad.
That reminded me of something which now has completely left my mind. It'll come back.
We can move on. You talked a little bit about process, having reference and things like that. Would love to hear how your process has changed or not over the years in terms of, how do you start from idea to finished page, finished work. And I know, some of the artists I work with think of the art is the book itself, right? The finished book is the finished piece, and everything else is just process. So I'd love to kind of talk through your process and how you think about your original pages.
Yeah, as I say, I got started in the pre-digital era, and I would just start drawing with a pencil on paper. My earliest comic strips basically were one pencil sketch, and then I'd ink them. It took me, and they look that way. They're not very good, they're quite awkward. But over time, I started doing more sketching, more iterations of each thing before I'd finish it. I went from using a rapidograph or a marker to using these dip pens with a more flexible, beautiful line. One thing about my process that really changed with digital stuff coming along was the way I write. And it might be really boring and tedious to explain this, but I'll just start and you can cut me off if it's too much.
Okay.
But, when I was doing my comic strip in the olden days, I'd just write it. I'd just write it in pencil, editing as I went, refining it, and then I'd ink the words. But when I started working on my first graphic novel,
there you go.
That looks so good. I miss doing that lettering because I have stopped doing hand lettering.
That's another question I have for you as well. When did you decide? I mean, all the Dykes pages that I have are hand lettered, but then when we moved to Fun Home, the lettering is left out on the original pages.
Yeah, and so these are pieces from probably the late 90s, early 2000s. It was sometime in the early 2000s as I was working on Fun Home and trying to figure out how I was going to do this whole, multiple hundreds of pages of a book, that I realized, I can't hand letter this. It's just, I can't do it. And I can't remember which happened first, but I did get a digital font made of my lettering. Did that happen first, or did the other thing is I started writing in Adobe Illustrator. I now write and compose in InDesign, but it's the same idea. It's like, I was thinking I could actually show. Can I share my screen, or does that
I believe
work?
so.
Because I could just show that a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you hit present, you should be able to.
Present.
Do you see?
I don't see anything that says present.
See if I can. I see.
Oh, there. Yeah, hang on. Okay. Share screen.
We're doing it live, folks. Figuring it out live.
Yes.
Let me go to, once you have that ready.
Entire screen. Window. I'll
show your art while you're working on that page from Fun Home.
I'm just going to show my entire screen because I don't know how else to do this.
Okay. Let me know when you've.
Oh, it's going to go crazy because it'll share what we're looking at. Okay, but don't do that. Don't do that. Here. Is that? Can you see this?
Here,
is it going crazy?
Oh, hold on. I've got to.
Wait, I'm going to stop.
There we are.
Oh, okay. Okay, so here. How's that?
I can see it.
Okay, this is an InDesign document. This is a piece I'm working on right now. I have to write an introduction for the 20th anniversary edition of Fun Home. So I don't write in pencil anymore. I actually just start typing in my digital font in page spreads. And
so this is the script. Then you're just.
Yeah, I guess you would call it the script. I mean, I think of it as the work itself that eventually I will add drawings to. But, I don't like to do much drawing at the beginning because everything's still in flux. And I don't want to spend time on a drawing till I know what I'm doing. So I just start writing. I make dialogue and panel layouts, depending on what I think I'm doing. I drag all kinds of other material in. I have, notes and questions on the side. The longer I work on writing, the more stuff just kind of piles up in this document until it gets a little illegible. And then I have to start weeding it out. Like it all gets like overlapping like this. But eventually I get a nice tight script or
layout. Yeah.
Layout. And then I print that out and start drawing. Okay.
So do you, I have so many questions and thoughts. Do you have an idea of what you're going to draw? It's just,
yeah.
in your head?
I think that's the part I forget to say. Like, as I'm doing this, to me, this is a kind of drawing because I'm just automatically thinking about what the image is. Like, I know that in this first panel here, it's me standing in front of an audience and someone's asking me this question. How do you think your father would feel about Fun Home? So I have to draw all these little people in the audience and I'm standing up here alone in the spotlight. So I just know that. I don't have to even make a note unless I'm showing it to my editor who needs to understand what's happening. So to me, it is a kind of drawing, I know, like, I don't have to draw that. I know what it's going to be.
Yeah. Would you recommend, I mean, and we're getting ahead on some of these questions, but you've taught classes for a few years as well. Is that a method that you would recommend other cartoonists taking in terms of kind of building out the script and layouts and script, even before, doing any of the drawings or thumbnails?
Not necessarily. I think this is very particular to me. I'm a very word-heavy cartoonist. The writing is kind of foremost for me in a way that's not necessarily true of other cartoonists. I think, if the line itself, the drawing itself is what drives your work, then this is not a system that would work for you. Also, it's crazy. It took a long time to learn it and become fluent in it. And not everyone has the patience for that. Not everyone needs to do that. I find it really helpful.
Yeah. That's such a treat. Thank you for sharing that. That is really interesting. And in terms of kind of thinking about, I don't know, I keep returning to a conversation you had with Tilly Walden, where I don't know if it was a question that came out from the audience, but it was around your sort of journaling and keeping track of kind of, and you presented it as I'm just kind of writing what happens, each day. But I'm curious how much that process of writing every day informs your development of stories and things later on, or are those separate? Or I'm always interested in folks who have kind of a daily writing practice and how that connects or not to their actual work.
Yeah, I've been keeping a journal for my whole life. It is a vast amount of text at this point. It's crazy. And I'm beginning to question its usefulness with regard to my work. When I was working on Fun Home, when I was working on Are You My Mother, these really kind of searching, questing family memoirs, I found it helpful to look back over my notes from earlier in my life. Certainly, I used my childhood diaries a lot in Fun Home. And in Are You My Mother, I referred back to stuff from my 20s, like from later in my life that I had all these notes on that was helpful to have. But I also began to feel that if I didn't have this lengthy paper trail, I would be kind of more free in a way to just say whatever I wanted, make claims that I didn't have to back up with physical evidence. So sometimes I have felt a little boxed in by the fact that I have all these records. And honestly, there's just so much material at this point. It's hard to find anything, even digitally searching. It's like, it's crazy.
That's so interesting. I for a short period of time, I used to teach creative nonfiction writing classes to middle and high school gifted and talented students. And thinking of a journal as potentially a limitation in some ways is a really interesting bent to it. I mean, the emphasis on creative nonfiction, right? Sort of being able to interpret your memories and your experiences in compelling ways. It's just interesting to think about, whether or not that your memory that was trapped in that specific point when you wrote it down versus 20 years later, how do you interpret that? How does that change? How do you interact with that text, and how sacred is that text is really interesting.
Yeah. I think one thing that's happening to me as I get older is I used to just really, my journals were important to me. This is like my treasure.
Yeah.
And increasingly, I feel like it's almost like a sort of waste byproduct of my life. Like it's just like this bodily process I have to do every day. Like just got to take stock of what I did and what I thought about. I mean, often it's not even what I think about. It's literally like the errands I ran. It's crazy. But is that really necessary? And does it, I think I got some clarity on this when my mother died, and I opened up a box of her diary entries, which she would make on her computer. So like each day would be printed on a separate sheet of paper. We started looking at them. I feel bad about this. I expressly did not obey my mother's wishes. She told me to throw that stuff out. I didn't throw it out. I hung on to it for a while, and eventually I sort of looked through it. And she was doing the same thing I do. She was just writing down what she did that day. And it was very repetitive over time. You look at 100 of these entries, it's like, is this? And I just realized our lives are not that interesting.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah. It's all perspective, though. I mean, as a former scholar of cultural studies, I think that the mundane is also significant in ways too. But that's a whole other conversation.
Well, I do feel that way. I think that's one of the things I love about comics is that it's a way to capture the mundane details of life in a way that wouldn't, literature doesn't do. It's like too trivial for a great book, but comics is really good at that. And that's one of the things I love about life is the little everyday details.
Yeah. Yeah. To bring us back to, although I'm very much enjoying this, to bring us back to kind of the physicalness of the original art. Before we connected, you had sold a number of pages from a few of your books in the past. Curious as to why you decided to let go of some of that. And I think that also connects to your relationship to the physical art itself, and how precious you are about those kind of original pages.
Yeah. I mean, I've always really treasured my physical drawings. Even as a kid, I saved my drawings. I still have the drawings I made as a child that I saved in a styrofoam ice chest because it was like the perfect size. So, and even as a young child, I would think about people who sold their work. I was like, that is what I want to do. Yeah. But I also knew that letting go of the things I made would be painful somehow. Yeah. And it sort of was. As I grew up and people actually were interested in buying my work, it took a long time to get to that point. But when it did, it was like, wow, that's wild. And yeah, I would always be kind of reluctant to let go of it. It was nice to get some money, but it was sad to lose the art. I don't quite feel that way anymore because again, there's so much of it. I can't hang on to all this stuff. It's just moldering away. And it's a great, great honor that people want this stuff. Often I have this ambivalent feeling toward giving my work as a gift. I used to do that more readily, like, oh, here, you can have a page of this book, until I realized how kind of egocentric that was. And what if they didn't want it? What if they didn't like that page? They feel like they have to like take it out of the closet and put on the wall when I come over. So that's always kind of awkward, and I'm trying to curb that instinct to give away my art to my friends, because they don't really want it. I don't really want it.
I mean, I don't know your friends, but I feel like folks from our partnership together, folks have wanted your originals. So it's probably a treat to have gifted a page from you. Seems like kind of a big deal.
Well, I kind of, the reason I'm happy to have you handling selling my originals now is because it was very time consuming, like because my book work isn't complete. It doesn't look like the book. The line art is on one piece of paper. The text is done digitally. So yeah, it's kind of naked. Even the blacks, to save time, I would do that in Photoshop. So the original pages are quite, just kind of naked and not beautiful. Like I never thought of them as like art. They were just like a means to an end.
Well, I think they're beautiful, and kind of interestingly, in the comic art collecting world, seeing the process is something that folks are actually interested in. And so, there's notes on the sides of these pages. I remember my favorite one that you gave me, you could tell the story, but was a page that flew out of your car. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was in the pre-digital era, when I would have to drive 20 miles to town and make a photostat to reduce my artwork to a size that I would then copy and mail out. And on one of these trips, the artwork flew out the window of the car right along the interstate, and I had to pull over and like run up and down the highway trying to find the page. And so that interested me. I marked on the margin that this was the page that flew out the window, and
somebody bought it. Somebody bought that page, by the way.
I spent so much of my life drawing that these pieces of, these pages of cartoon art are like, that's my life. That's the time of my life. This is what I've been doing. So it's funny to think of it that way, you take hours and hours, and this is what you get.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that you're willing to allow some of it to go into the world and to bring joy to folks, so that they can put it on their wall and celebrate your work. I think to your earlier point, and with the folks who've been in the business longer that I work with, there is a hesitation to sell some of the pages early on for a variety of reasons. And then they start looking at these piles and piles and piles of original pieces. And, I think being able to keep a lot of it if you want, and give out a little bit or sell a little bit can, put goodwill into the world and get some money for you folks that a lot of comics folks aren't paid in the way that they should be for the magic, in my opinion, the magic that they're bringing into the world.
Yeah, being able to sell the art is like certainly a bonus in that regard, because God knows, you don't get. I just did a piece for the New York Times, and I got like, I think $1,000, and it took weeks. I mean, you just don't get paid what it's worth often. I mean, I'm very lucky. Somehow this has worked out for me, and I'm able to sell books and make money that way. But I get paid much more to go out and talk about my work than I do for the work itself often.
Yeah, it's really interesting in the sort of social media world around comics. Every few months, there'll be a big thread of folks who will talk about the page rates that they're getting, specifically from a variety of spaces. But the ones that are most shocking to me are from the mainstream superhero world, where page rates have not increased in very much in the past 40 years, 30, 40 years. And so the folks that are at the top of their game, it's always kind of shocking. And I don't think a lot of people really know or talk about it outside of the community. I know as a kid, when I was reading comics and falling in love with them and wanting to be an artist, but not having the ability to do so, I just assumed that these people that were creating things that inspired me, that made me feel things, that made me feel further, better connected, were actually, able to survive off of the work that they're doing. So part of the mission of what I'm doing is to support folks and to be able to selfishly to ensure that artists can continue to do their work.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unfortunate that these systems are set in place, and we keep trying to figure out, like, are there ways to and a lot of good smart people are trying to figure out, like, how can we make this all more sustainable, but it's difficult in the current system and all the things that are happening in the world. But,
yeah, I mean, I'm not a Patreon person, but I know a lot of people do stuff like that, and I guess that's one way of managing a little stream of income. I don't really know how that works out for people, how well they do.
I think it depends. I think part of the attraction to me to collecting art was really this old model of being a patron of the arts, and doing it in the comic space was more affordable than doing it in the fine art space. And so you get that sort of joy of being able to say the money that I spent on this thing, that I could have spent on something stupid that was just about me,
really helped somebody.
And I think, the feedback I get from a lot of the folks I work with, and I work with folks like you, I work with folks who are stapling their comics together still. The money that comes in can be a big deal. It can pay for rent. It can pay for a new water heater. It can, help buy a new car. Those are all real things that I've heard from artists. So I think that the unfortunate thing, as a systems thinker, is that, it doesn't fix the problem. It helps a small group of people be more successful. But I don't think there's any easy answers as to how to fix comics, unfortunately. I did want to ask you, you talked about kind of this idea of eventually selling your art as being, what artists do, right? Your art has been displayed all over the world. I was lucky enough to go to the Pompidou a few years ago, where I think there were 3 pages from Fun Home in it. You also had a show in Switzerland at the Cartoon Museum, I believe.
Yeah.
Soon after that, actually. How does that make you feel that your art is in these spectacular museums across the world?
It makes me feel super fancy.
You are very fancy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't have anything more to say about it. It's just really great. That the show that you saw in Basel at the Cartoon Museum, the woman who curated that just came here and like went through all my drawers and just like took stuff, and I was like, wow, how's she gonna make sense of that? How's she gonna like make wall placards explaining what all this stuff is? And I was sort of excited to see that, but she didn't do any of that. She just like
took it,
put it up on the wall.
Oh, interesting.
Without a lot of explanations. Sometimes a sketch wasn't differentiated from the final version of a drawing, and it was kind of cool. Like I treat it so preciously, all my work, which is part of why, Sean, why I was relieved to have you kind of take over selling it, because I would want to prepare all those pages so they looked like the book. I developed this crazy elaborate system of printing out the text, the digital text, and the color on an acetate sheet that I would affix to the line art so it looked like the book, but it was hideous. It was like this hideous, crappy acetate that I probably immediately started degrading the Bristol board underneath it. And it took forever to do that. So it was like, I can't keep doing this. And you seem happy to just sell the line art. Here's the line art for this page. And you don't have the same compulsive need to like make it look like the book that I did.
I did have to laugh when you asked me if folks would they even want this? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure people would want this. I think that original method works too, but folks are just excited to have a page from Fun Home or a page from Spence or any of your books, and they all tell a story. And for me, what I love about collecting is the story I have of when I bought the piece, why I bought the piece, where I was in my life, if I'm lucky enough to interact directly with an artist, kind of that building of a relationship. So there's all sorts of meaning, I think, connected to all of this that gets more complicated. I wanted to ask you though, you talked about that show with there not being a lot of context. One of the things I was interested in at the Pompidou, which was every floor of the Pompidou was comics. It's this massive space. It was spectacular. It was overwhelming. But I was surprised that there wasn't more sort of commentary or context, or particularly, there were some pieces that, sort of culturally, I think maybe wouldn't fly as much today as they would have in the past.
Like you'd think it'd have some kind of explanatory note.
Yeah. So, if a piece depicts an African in a specific way, was that progressive at the time? Is that problematic then, problematic now? What's the context of, dykes to watch out for? Or how is that different now than it was when you were writing it? Right. I think I'm on both sides though, because I do think, coming in at it and kind of interpreting it, how that interpretation can be important, and kind of just putting art and letting folks build those connections. But I think comics is such a, we don't see comics in museums very often. And so I think a lot about kind of what you need to do to help people kind of understand what comics is and what it's doing, and maybe how it's unique. But I'm curious if you have thoughts about, it seems like your show, the show was beautiful. But I don't know if you have thoughts about that specific show or sort of comics in sort of museum settings in general, but would love to hear.
I do have some thoughts about that. I guess ambivalence is my middle name, because I have ambivalence about how comics work in galleries, because, my stuff is mostly pages from books. And I've had shows where you see people looking at the exhibit and they're just standing very close to the wall reading this page.
Yeah.
And then they move to the right and read the next page. And I don't like that somehow. Like, it's much more efficient to sit down and read the book. It might be interesting to see my white out and the notes and the margins, but somehow I don't know if it's worth all that trouble to put it on the wall just to see those things. It feels kind of static, like, isn't there a better way? Like, I like seeing my work blown up really big. Sometimes that's fun in a museum setting.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to remember, there's a show in Philly, it might have been at Drexel, that Partners and Son helped put together, and they had the original pieces, but then they blew up the page next to it, and they had a lot of space. And I thought that was a really interesting way to show kind of the final, like, in full color piece in, juxtaposed with the actual original. I love seeing comic art in museums, but I think folks are still trying to figure out what the best way to do that is. The neat thing, the part that I loved the most in the Pompidou was kind of a horror, Charles Burns, Emile Ferris section, where the room was dark and they had spotlights on the art itself, and it felt like you were in this dark pit looking at the art, and it was like a super interesting way. Like I thought that was the most interesting space, where they were really trying to kind of create an experience connected to the art.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great. That sounds fun. I think one of your questions that you sent in advance was about is the printed work the finished work, or is it or what did you say? Sorry, I'm incoherent at this time of day.
No. So it was about this idea of,
I work with a number of artists, you say, who really only care about the printed final version of their work. The original art is just a means to an end.
So for instance, Tilly Walden, another Vermont comic laureate, could care less about any of those originals. She uses any type of paper that she can find, to my chagrin, because we sell a lot of her art. She took I don't know if you knew this, but and I may have told you this, but
oh my God, I can't
on a sunbeam, she just put in the recycling, and when she was traveling in Japan, she didn't want to take it with her.
Beautiful drawing.
I joke with her. I say that both of all of our kids would be able to go to college based off of the sales from On a Sunbeam, because I get people asking all of the time for that. Yeah. But there's a beauty to it in my mind. This sort of like impermanence. All of it's gonna disappear and rot away at some point. And
yeah, that's true. But Tilly might be a special case. She is so gifted. Maybe she knows she can just pull more of this out of herself, since she isn't attached to it. I'm not like that at all. It's very hard for me to get a good drawing. So when I manage one, I'm like, I care about it.
Yeah. So do you think of that in terms of like each piece each page is kind of a precious piece of art unto itself?
Well, now I'm getting myself confused, because while I do have a certain like cathexis to my original art, I also, that's not what people are supposed to see. I want them to see the finished printed version without the whiteout, without the pencil markings, without the notes. Yeah, I got my training in part through working on newspaper layout and, kind of this graphic design world. And you would never display your mechanicals. That's just a means to an end. Right. So I have both of those feelings. I love the original art, but it's really just, it's meant to be seen printed.
Yeah. Going back to, you being a teacher, would love to hear any advice that you have for up and coming cartoonists. I guess it's not to necessarily follow your your layouts and how you do it that way, or perhaps do it if it makes sense to them. But I know you've been teaching for a while. Are there pieces of advice that you would give to folks generally?
I still honestly don't know what I'm doing as a teacher. I keep trying to find ways to show young people starting out the stuff that I had to figure out for myself over the years. But I don't really have a methodical way to do that. My favorite thing in teaching is to just work with them, to see what they want to do, and to help them understand that you have to fit this into certain constraints. You have to, you're going to print this out using a copy machine. And young people aren't used to doing physical things, I find, and it's fun for them. At first it's kind of baffling. Like, why do you want me to copy this? I've never used a copying machine. They don't even use copying machines anymore. And I just tell them they have to do it. You need to make a book. You want to hold it in your hands. You're going to staple this thing. And that just, walking them through that process is very rewarding and fun as they grapple with it. And I don't know. I don't really have a grand theory of teaching. I just try to shepherd their work along. I'm trying to make a coherent sequence of exercises that build over the course of the semester. And I kind of do that. There's lots of, I refer to Linda Barry's books a lot. Ivan Brunetti's book on teaching comics. Use a lot of their stuff and exercises in my class. But my favorite comics exercise of all is something that I found on the Center for Cartoon Studies website, which is the Foldy. Have you heard of the Foldy?
I don't know. Maybe.
It's a comic made with one piece of paper that you fold up multiple times, and then when you open it for the first time, you have like the cover is one panel. You open it, there's 2 panels. You open it again, 4 panels. You open it again, it keeps expanding.
Yeah.
I wish I had one. I'm sorry, I don't.
That's all right.
It's much better. But that single exercise, it's so powerful for just the way that it matters where you put things on the page in comics. The physicality of comics is super important. That's how you tell the story. The book is, in a way, the story. And in this case, you end up with one big drawing on the reverse of the paper. So it just teaches you to use the paper narratively,
Yeah. I love that.
Each opening is the equivalent to a page turn. And the page turn is something that's so powerful in comics. You don't really think about it. You turn the pages constantly, but it's a reveal. You want to use that so people can't see what's coming next. There's all kind of like these narrative tricks built into just the structure of a book.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I think a lot about the sort of page turn, specifically in a digital world where a lot of people are interacting with comics differently in graphic novels. And when I was reading more digitally, there was an option to go panel to panel. And kind of zooming in and out, and I think you can write to that kind of progression, but it's different than having a page. There was I'm blanking on the name, but there was a horror comic I read where I would get scared. I would turn the page and something shocking, and that's so hard to do. I think. There's just a beauty to being able to do that in kind of this visual medium. Yeah.
I try to encourage my students to, when they do the reading for class, to get the physical book. I mean, I often will provide them with a digital copy because I hate making people just buy so many things, but it's very different reading it on a screen.
Yeah. Well, I'll say I met one of your students at MoCA, and they said that they loved taking a class with you. So,
cool.
For what that means. I wanted to, in the time we have left, wanted to ask kind of a personal question from me, which kind of branches out into a broader thing. So the book that connects with me most, although I love all of your books, The Secret to Superhuman Strength, really just like pulled at my being when I read it for a bunch of different reasons. And sort of this exploration of physical fitness and mental health. And I've struggled for many years with self-diagnosed body dysmorphia and kind of being really heavy and losing a lot of weight, losing too much weight, and kind of dealing with all of those, changes and ultimately kind of control. Right. And so my question, it's not just about me, is you've been drawing yourself for so long, for years and years and years, and sort of different iterations, different ages. is that, do you find that a therapeutic process of kind of, and I guess drawing yourself and talking about your life as well, but I do think about kind of your image is in thousands of pages, right, at this point of material. Yeah. How do you kind of process that? Is that something you think about? I'm just super curious.
It's a little embarrassing.
Sorry to bring it up.
I do feel like, one answer is that drawing myself in my life has been a kind of therapy for me. I mean, I don't like to say that my work is therapy. I like to think that it's more processed than that. I go to therapy and do that work, and then I'm able to make work that takes that into account. But it isn't the therapy itself. But there is something about just representing myself. Honestly, I feel like I felt very unseen as a child in some ways, and I created. I started by keeping this diary that was a record of my experience, and now I also add pictures to it. Like I'm just keeping this kind of film going on my whole life to prove that I'm here, that I exist, which is a little sad.
I don't know if it's, I mean, it may be a little sad, but it's so relatable. I don't know. It's I think those of us who have gone through different traumas, and most people have gone through different traumas, being seen is important. And I think you're telling these stories, your own stories, but we see ourselves in those stories.
Well, that's the hope.
Yeah.
And I feel so happy when I can tell I've connected with someone, when someone got some meaning from this scene that I wrote about. Like that's the whole point of it, to get out of my own little silo and connect with other people.
Yeah. And you draw such beautiful figures and people. I've heard you talk about, the love of drawing people.
I do love people. I mean, people drive me crazy, and I also hate them. I love them, and drawing them is just an absorbing practice. Trying to capture some little facet of other human beings is such a wonderful, absorbing task.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time together. Would love. Are you working on any new projects now? You did a New York Times piece, but curious if you've got anything in the hopper, or are you kind of taking some time for yourself?
I'm doing a lot of little projects like poster designs and things, which is kind of cool. Like book covers. I like getting asked to do that stuff, but I'm kind of doing that while I cogitate on my next book, and that's starting to come together in my head, but I haven't really begun working on it. But I do want to. I think my next book is going to be. Oh, I probably shouldn't talk about it.
We can talk about it after.
Okay, yeah, it's so easy to just talk about it and take all the air out of it, and then I never do it. So let's just put a pin in that.
We'll leave it there. But I had talked to you a while ago. I mentioned, folks were doing commissions, and that was 100% not your interest. But I'm curious how you, with like doing posters and book designs, how do you decide what to kind of pick, what to do? Like, what do you, is it based off of the idea, you connect with it, you feel like it fits into your sort of your style, your world? Is it you're just kind of excited to do these different types of projects? Is there a method to it at all?
Hang on, I just want to see if I have this book handy. Stand by. Yeah. I was so psyched to get asked to do the cover for this book about Bernie Sanders.
Oh, he's so young.
I know. And I was like, well, I'm just going to draw Bernie. He's easy to draw. And I was going to draw like old Bernie, like the Bernie that we all know with the white hair. But as I read this book, it's not really about his whole life. It's about his 30s and 40s when he was mayor of Burlington, Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
And he was young and his hair was black. And so I started looking at these youthful pictures, and I just still didn't know what I was going to do. And one night this image of Ben Shannon's work popped into my head. I guess we're like running out of time, but here.
Feel free. We can extend it a little bit.
Well, this is just Ben Shannon's book. Okay. It's not really an example of his drawing, but I just love his drawings, this kind of primitive style. And I thought, well, he's also this like Jewish leftist guy, grew up on the Lower East Side. I felt like that style was very simpatico with Bernie. Now, at first I was trying to draw Bernie in that Ben Shahn style. Like that was my idea, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't replicate Shahn's beautiful, almost like childlike drawing. Mine just looked really stupid. So, in the end, I stole Shahn's wonderful lettering, this kind of, he used this block lettering himself for lots of book covers that he designed. So I kept that just for a little, feeling of Shahn, but then I just drew Bernie in my own style. So that's just like, I don't know how to make book covers. That's just how I did it.
Well, I like that one. Well, thank you. Well, I guess last question, then we can remind folks about where they can buy your art. But what's the best way that folks can support your art, your books?
Oh, just buying my books, I guess. And buying the art helps too, and also supports you.
Yeah. Well, I'll add just, I always love when folks support their independent bookshops as well, avoiding some of the bigger chains and things like that. We're very, very lucky in Ann Arbor to have, every time I walk around Ann Arbor and I'm like, there's another independent bookshop. Like, how does this exist? Like, I grew up in a town that had one bookshop that closed when I was pretty young. So we're very, very lucky. So I always, advocate that folks go and support. You can support a variety of people at the same time in comics, which is fun. I guess reminding folks that Alison's art is up on our website, atheniumcomicart.com. Happy if folks want to reach out with specific requests. I can always work with Alison to see if things are available that aren't on the website. But it's a great way to support the project of Athenium as well as Alison's work. And it's an exciting way to have a beautiful piece of art and know that your money is going into the pockets of really creative folks. So yeah. Is there anything else anything you want to kind of end with? Are you feeling good?
This is good. I'm happy to be working with you, Sean. You seem like just like such a good person doing this for the right reasons. So thanks.
Well, thank you. The other day I mentioned to someone, an artist I can't talk about yet, maybe never, but we'll see. I said, being an art rep is sometimes a thankless job. And they said, well, why do you say that? Well, I'm like, I have a full-time job and this is my second job. And, I'll be on the floor at 2 a.m. with all my family's asleep. And I'm trying to be quiet as I tape up, a package or something like that. And then the next day, a collector sent me like a giant thing of candy. So I was like, well, I guess people are thankful for
that's great.
Being able to ship art properly. So that made me feel good. Well, thank you so much, Alison. I really appreciated you taking the time. You're a busy person.
Thank you, Sean.
And this has been a fun chat. And go check out our website. Buy some art, buy some books, and thank you all for joining.
Thanks.